Hi, everyone. My name is DeAndre Sinnett, and I'm your host for Distinct Lens Podcast. I have a special guest here today. Her name is Stephanie Greenland. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, guys.
She's 22. She's currently a student and a healthcare assistant. She's from Bulawayo, Zimbabwe.
Yes.
Did I pronounce that correctly?
Very well. You've been practicing.
Okay. And she's living in Kobe currently, which is actually where we're at the moment.
Yes.
So, how are you?
I'm okay.
Okay.
And you? Good?
I'm doing good. So as you know, A Distinct Lens is a podcast about, it's a platform that I've created to allow us to share our experiences for the purposes of us leveling up in terms of financial literacy so that we can start to support one another a bit more and practice group economics so that we can, empower our community. So that's the purpose of the podcast, and I really appreciate you coming on to be a guest.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. I know you're a really busy young lady, so I guess we'll just dive right in. So I wanted to ask, you were born in Bulawayo?
Bulawayo, yes.
Okay. What was life like when you were growing up there?
Well, to start off, I feel like it's really very different from life over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like from a young age, we were taught to be very independent. Like, I remember my mum would leave the house and would be home alone with no adults in the house. And when I came here and I told people that, it was like a very big taboo, like you'd never leave kids alone.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's when I started to notice, okay, now things are a bit different here, do you know what I mean?
Okay.
But yeah, I feel like children are just taught to be a lot more independent.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Do you know how old you were when you started to realize you were home alone?
7?
7 years old?
Yeah, 7. So I would be 7, my youngest brother would be 3, and then Gerard would be 10. So just those ages home alone.
And Gerard is
my older brother.
Your older brother.
Yes.
So was he the oldest in the house?
In the house at the time, yes.
And how old was he?
10.
Okay, so he was like looking out for the other children.
Yeah.
Okay, and he would prepare the meals.
No, that would be me.
Yeah. At 7?
At 7.
Wow.
Surprised no one died. Like, I remember one time my mum went to work and we were all at home hungry and we're like, okay, what are we going to eat? And we used to have a swimming pool, but the swimming pool broke. So we used to have fish in the pool, like little guppy fish.
Uh-huh.
So we're like, okay, we're going to catch the fish and then we're going to cook them.
What?
So we used to have a maid that would stay like on the same property. Like, okay, it's a bit different again. Like, we have maids in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
So we used to have a maid that would stay in the property, but obviously she'd have her own quarters. So we said to her, if you make the fire, we'll all eat the fish together. So I remember we caught all the fish, which we weren't allowed to do. And then we went down to go fry them. And my mum came home from work and she caught us and we got beat. But then we were hungry, so I didn't know what she expected us to do.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about it. You guys had a swimming pool.
Yes.
And you had maids.
Yes, but the swimming pool was broken.
So you guys were pretty well off growing up?
Not us as per se, because when I was younger, I lived in my elder brother and sister's dad's house.
Okay.
So he was a Danish man.
Okay.
That my mum obviously hadn't been involved in, and when he left Zimbabwe, he allowed my mum to continue to stay in the house with us. So it wasn't as per se us being well off, it was more so generosity of others, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay, so you mentioned your mom.
Yes.
Were you raised by anyone else in the house?
In the house?
Or not just in the house, were you raised by anyone else when you were growing up in Birmingham?
Yeah, so basically my mom, obviously, she had quite a few partners. So like, she was very, how do you put it in a polite way? Very, trying to put it as nice as my mama. She was very weak-minded when it came to men. That's the nicest way I can put it.
Okay.
So if a man said jump, she would say how high.
Ah, okay.
So once she met this man, and then he had a job in South Africa, and around the time I was still in junior school, so that's 3 years until 12 years. So I was under the age of 12.
Okay.
I remember being 10, 11, and then he got a job in South Africa, and then she wanted to obviously go with him because she obviously didn't want to be apart from her partner. And obviously because I was still in school, and then it's kind of like what man wants to look after other people's children, do you know what I mean?
Right.
So then she left me and Gerard. She took my youngest brother, who's 4 years younger than me, so he'll be 5, 6. And she left us with a friend of hers.
Really?
Yes. But the friend of hers is actually a relative of Natasha's. So the friend of hers...
And Natasha is...
my cousin.
Your cousin.
Yes.
Okay. It was also a
on the
guest
podcast. Yeah, it's a family affair.
Yes.
So then she left us with her friend who was in a highly abusive relationship, but she was aware of the abuse taking place in the house, but she just placed us in their care because no one else would take us in.
So your mom knew that the friend she left you with was in a domestic abuse situation, and she still chose to leave you and your brother there.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, so then we stayed with her for on and off like 2 years. Like my mum would come home for a bit, take us, then drop us off again and go again.
Wow.
Yeah. So then, and then when I was about like 12, we went to stay in South Africa for a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Now, with your mom and
with
the
my
guy?
mom and the guy, and my little brother. But it was only like a holiday, so we were there like 2-3 months, so we weren't there for too long. And then he lost his jobs, then we all moved back.
Did he come?
With as well, yes, that's the only reason. She wouldn't have come back without him.
Okay.
Yeah, and then my father, who left to live in the UK when I was 3 years old, he came back to the UK to try and get July and myself visas in order to come to the UK. And in order for us to get the visas, social services said he has to be like our sole care provider. So then we had to move out my mum's house and now move into my dad's house.
Okay.
And my dad stayed with my grandma.
Okay.
Not a very nice lady. So then I stayed with my dad for a little bit, but the home environment was just not.
Now you said not a very nice lady. Yeah. Do you care to elaborate? Or?
She's just not a very nice person. Like, she'd just like constantly tell my dad, oh, you need to beat your kids up. But we wouldn't have done anything. Or she'd be like, we had a special fridge in the house where there was food that only we were allowed to eat in there. We weren't allowed to eat out the main fridge. So we had our own little refrigerator.
Yeah. So you guys only eat out of
that refrigerator. We weren't allowed to take any food out of the main refrigerator. Because obviously she has quite a big amount of kids and grandkids. I had a room in the house, but every single time a family member would come, I'd come home to all my stuff packed up.
Really?
Yeah.
Every time?
Every time. I would be kicked out my room to accommodate for one of my cousins or something coming into the house.
So where would you sleep?
In the lounge. Or I'd go home to my mom's house.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously it wasn't working for me, and I just says to so my dad came, because when my dad would go back to the UK, obviously, because his wife is British, so her Zimbabwean visa would run out. So obviously she'd have to go back to renew the visa, then come back into the country again.
Right.
So every couple of months they'd go back, obviously. So one time when my dad went back, I had to move out of my grandma's house because she didn't want to look after us when my dad wasn't there. So I'd either go to my mum's house, but then my mum would be like, I have no money, so I can't take you to school or anything. So then I'd go stay by my grandma because my grandma lived like close to my school. So my grandma would take us in. But then sometimes my grandma would be like, we don't have money because my dad wasn't giving them any money for us.
And you had, from my understanding, you had to pay to go to school.
Just school fees, yeah. So my dad would only send money for school fees. No extra money. Didn't care about how we were getting to school. Didn't care what we were eating at school. Didn't care what we were wearing to school.
Just, these are school fees. Just make sure you
go to school, yeah.
Wow.
So then I moved in with my grandma. So it was back and forth between my dad's house, my grandma's house, and my mum's house. I was just bounced. Like, I literally lived out of a suitcase at one point because I was tired. I was so mentally tired of packing a bag.
And how long of a period did this last?
2-3 years.
Okay.
Until I moved to the UK. So I'll say 13 until about 16. I was just being bounced back and forth.
Okay, so let me ask. Education during that time. Were you going to school on a regular basis during that time?
Depending on if people had the finances to get me to school. So sometimes it would be on and off. Like sometimes I'd miss school, and then people would be asking you why you're not at school, but how do you explain a home situation like that? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's quite difficult.
even especially as a child.
Yeah. So it was when someone could get me to school, I'd be going to school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the times when you were in school, I wanted to ask, did you learn anything about finances or managing money or?
No. In Zimbabwe, you find it's very taboo for people to even speak about money, let alone how to deal with money. And because of the currency we had, like I've listened to Gerard and Natasha's podcasts where they talk about like inflation and stuff in Zimbabwe, because money would switch and change. Like would go from the rand to the pula to the dollar to the bond. We were switching between currencies so quickly, and money was devaluing at an even faster rate. It was hard for you to teach somebody, oh, this is how much this is, and you shouldn't spend more than that on this, or you should save for this, because you could save for something today. Tomorrow, when you went to the shop, it wouldn't be the same price anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was really hard to get a gauge for the value of things.
Anything, exactly.
Using the currency that you guys had.
And then because jobs are even more scarce, it's hard for you to say, oh, if you go to work and you save this percentage of your wage or this percentage of your salary, because people are hardly employed.
Now, why is that?
I feel like mainly due to like just lack of industry, and then most of the money, like I just feel like it's lack of a sense of intelligence within Zimbabwe, because look at it this way, we import most of our goods. So any money that goes into our economy leaves before it even settles. So it goes straight out your pocket to South Africa, because that's where we'd import most of our goods from. So there was hardly any money in our economy. So how are we keeping industry open? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's no one buying from us. So how are you paying your workers? How are you keeping the factory running? There's just a lack of economy as a whole.
Okay. So you said how old were you when you moved to the UK?
16.
16.
Yes.
Okay. So what was that like?
Culture shock of my life.
Culture shock.
Yes.
Okay. Tell me a bit about it.
Just people here are so different. I just feel like, because especially having quite a hard life, you just realize that some people here were really privileged compared to what I saw. Like, they got to go to school for free. I've seen children beg their parents to be sent to school because their parents couldn't afford to send them to school.
Wow.
Whereas children here would just say, oh, well, I don't want to go to school, where there was a child back home dying just for that opportunity.
To go to school and take advantage of
that opportunity.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Crazy.
It really puts things in perspective.
Exactly.
I know, I grew up in the United States, but I do remember, going to school, and a lot of kids there wouldn't want to be there.
Exactly.
I remember I was the kid sometimes that'd be like, I wanted to stay at home. You take that for granted.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, when you came to the UK, you were 16.
Yes.
From my understanding, at 16 in the UK is when you begin to take your GCSEs.
Yeah, GCSEs.
GCSEs,
Yeah.
yes. Okay, and that's like the equivalent of getting prepared to go to college in the United States. So you take those tests here, so you can start to potentially go to uni, or it's another path that you can take.
Yeah, so you'll do your GCSEs, and then you'll do your A levels, and then you can go to uni. Yeah.
Okay.
So 18, then you go to uni. Yeah.
Okay. So you said culture shock.
Yes.
What happened?
Obviously, I got here and I was just this little girl in this big world, and then you get here, and then people look at you differently as well, because obviously I had quite a strong accent when I came in, so everyone was like, what the hell? But then it's just so different. Like, you can literally, like, I remember you just go into a shop and everything you could have ever wanted would be in the shop. Whereas sometimes in Zimbabwe, like, when imports were low, like, you go into the shop and all you'd have was toilet paper in the whole entire shop.
Wow.
So you just go in the shops here, and like the shelves would just be stacked to the fullest. Just like, oh my gosh.
Wow. What were the people like?
People? Oh. When I first went to school, I realized that people were just quite small-minded. Like, I remember my first week of school, one of the girls asked me, oh, have you ever slept with a fisherman for fish? And I was like, pardon? Like, what do you mean?
Now, did she ask you that because you were a foreigner from Africa?
Yes. I wish I knew the thought process behind the question, but she said she saw it on TV, and I just thought, okay.
And she believed that?
Yeah, she believed that that's what we did in order to get by.
And something I want to point out, that's the power of media. We've allowed, I don't even want to say we've allowed, there's been such an export of the Black experience by Western civilization around the globe that depicts us in such a degrading way, in such an inaccurate way. Like, case in point, what you're talking about. Like, what?
Exactly. Like, what was the thought process behind that? But then you can't blame people. Well, I mean, you can, because it's not hard to research in our day and age. We have plenty.
Yeah, at the crux of it is ignorance.
Exactly.
They just don't know any better,
Exactly.
and they're believing what they see on the TV screen.
It was so crazy. I did to this day. I've not answered that question because I just thought, what the hell?
Wow.
Crazy.
Okay. And so, what school did you like when you moved over here? Where were you living at? Like what town? What city?
So I've lived in Corby.
The whole time.
When I went to university, I moved out of Corby.
Okay.
But for high school, so for 3 years of high school, because I had to redo 1 year because just of the whole uneducated African stereotype, they thought I was incapable of writing my GCSEs that same year. So they pushed me back a year because they just thought I lacked education.
So you didn't even have an opportunity.
Nope, they said straight away that they put it in the sense that I would be at a disadvantage. But then I had all my school reports and everything. So I was like, no, I've already learnt most of your content.
Mm-hmm.
I can just write the exams. I was more than confident to just do that.
Mm-hmm.
But they were like, no.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so that next year, you took
my GCSEs, yeah.
Okay.
Then I passed all of them so I could go on to A-levels.
Okay.
And so then I picked my A-level subjects in line with what I thought I wanted to do at uni, but then I changed my mind after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now you're in university.
Yes, I'm in university.
Now, I want to ask, when you were going through school, when you moved to the UK, and was there any type of education about finances or managing money?
No.
Or how to make money work for you?
No, nothing at all. Nothing. I even took business as an A-level, and I never learned that.
Wow.
Not even a bit of accounting, nothing.
Oh, so what were they teaching in business courses?
Just more so how to run businesses. Not even how to start a business,
but how to run
a business. Like you just wake up one day with a business and
this is how you run it.
this is how you run it.
You know, it's funny. So I have a bachelor's degree in business.
Mm-hmm.
I have a master's degree in business. I took one course on entrepreneurship, and that was in undergrad. The rest of the things that I learned, like my bachelor's degree prepared me to be like a mid-level manager at a large corporation, say a Fortune 500 or a FTSE 500 corporation. And then in my master's degree, you know, it helped me to master the ins and outs of business, like big business. But I only had one course on actually how to start a business, and it didn't even get to the basics, like the documents, the legal documents you would need, the legal entities you would need to set up, how to go about it in a particular state that you lived in, like those really important details.
Like the application process, just anything, registering your business, none of that.
None of it. And so it struck me as odd, and I was like, am I the only one having this experience? Like, but it's like we're conditioned, we're socialized, we're taught to work for
other people. Oh my God, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you went off to university.
Yes.
Where do you go to university? Because you're currently in school now, right?
I'm learning online now. Okay. But I go to university in Birmingham, which is about an hour away from here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know, mostly what I know about Birmingham is what I've seen on Peaky Blinders.
It's nothing like that at all.
I imagine, you know, this is just the show on
it's
TV.
Very multicultural, I'll say. I found that one of the most shocking things.
Mm.
So when I went there, it's very diverse in the sense that you find Asians, Black, like both types of Asian, like Middle Eastern and like...
Now, when you say Asians, in the United States, when we usually say Asian, we're referring to people specifically like from China, Japan, Korea, the Philippines. You know, we consider those people Asian. Here, that also encompasses what Western civilization has labeled as the Middle East as well. So people from Pakistan, people from Afghanistan. I didn't know that. I found that interesting when I was there. Yeah. Now, why is that? Do you know that?
I actually have no idea why, but that's just how they've been labeled as them.
Okay. So what was it like moving from Corby to Birmingham?
So when I lived in Corby, I had majority like white friends, and I had 2 Black friends. Mm-hmm. And when I'm now in Birmingham, I only have Black friends.
Ah.
But I feel like it's just because, obviously I came from Zimbabwe where majority of my friends were Black, so I just feel more comfortable being in a Black social setting, if that makes sense. And
is that is that the reason for that? Is that because of how you were raised?
I feel like it's how I was raised and how they were raised as well. Like I find it really hard to level with certain people on like a specific level. Whereas with other black people, like I find it a bit easier.
Because you have similar experiences. I can dig it. Okay. So I always send out a pre-interview questionnaire.
Yes.
And one of the questions that I asked was, do you believe financial literacy is important in our communities?
Yes.
And you said yes.
Of course.
Could you elaborate a bit why?
I feel like in order for us to boost our own economy in a sense, we need to be able to know how to start our own businesses, because how are we going to boost the black economy if black people do not know how to start their own businesses?
Excellent point.
So if we all learn, in a sense, how to start our own businesses and keep the money within our community, obviously will boost us as a people.
Right.
Yes. And then also, I feel like we need to be buying more houses. We need to be just doing more as a people. Yes.
I totally agree with you. Doing more as a people to create that generational wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah, because purchasing a home is one of the avenues to create generational wealth.
Exactly.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, what are you going to school for right now? Like, what's your major?
I do early childhood studies, which is basically like child psychology.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, why child psychology?
Since I was young, I knew I wanted to work with children, but I didn't know in what sense. So as I said earlier, like when I first picked my A-level subjects, which base and like determine what courses you can do at uni, I wanted to be a child nurse. But then as I realized that the nursing industry and just the NHS as a whole is just crumbling at the moment. So I didn't really want to be involved in something like that where nurses were saying that they don't even want to go to work because it's so emotionally draining. And then I knew I wanted to work with children, so I just thought, where do I go from there? And I knew I wanted to help them in some aspect of their life. Like obviously, like helping children, I feel like it just influences the generations to come. I feel like working with children, it allows you to just better a generation.
That's an excellent point.
So I've always wanted to influence children. So I thought helping them is the best way to do that. And I thought about teaching, but then I thought in this country, it's a bit harder to influence children to do better because there's just so many rules and regulations about what you can and can't teach them. So then I thought, okay, child psychology, because that way I can help them fix the community, better generations to come. So then that's why I picked child psychology.
That is very noble.
Thank you.
Very, very noble. And from my understanding, you're about to graduate?
Yes, I graduate this year, hopefully.
Well, we're going to claim that. You're graduating this year.
Amen.
Okay. What month? Do you know?
My last piece of coursework goes in May, so after May I'm done. I've not resitting any modules this year, amen. So in May I'm done.
Okay, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, what's the plan after graduation?
So I've already started applying for postgraduate courses. So I've applied for play therapy, and then I've applied for like teaching but children with special educational needs. Because I currently work with people with educational needs, and I find it like a very rewarding job.
Okay. And this is what you do outside of going to
school.
Okay.
Yes, it's my part-time job. I say part-time, but it's more like full-time.
Okay.
But yeah.
Now, why do you find that so fulfilling?
I feel like just the type of nature I am, because I've always said in order to be successful in a job, you have to base your job over what type of person you are. So I find fulfillment from helping other people.
Okay.
So that's why I feel like I find the job itself fulfilling, because I go to work every day and I come home and I'm like, okay, I've done that today. So it's a bit more fulfilling. Whereas I find like it wouldn't be fulfilling for someone else. I feel like it's more so based on the type of person you are.
Now, I want to ask, like, is it something that you're passionate about? Like, you find the time going by quickly because you're just so engrossed in what you're doing at the time?
It's like sometimes I work 24-hour shifts. And I feel like if I didn't feel like time was going so fast, I wouldn't be able to work shifts like that. So it's less so like a job, because I enjoy going in every day.
Wow.
So it's rewarding.
That's really, really good. You know, some people, 40, 50, 60 years old haven't found that thing that drives them, that passion for doing something and get paid for it. That's really, really good. Okay. So another question that I also ask is about the most impactful or influential book or podcast or some type of publication that you've been exposed to in your life. And you mentioned How to Influence People
and Make Friends.
Friends. And who wrote that?
I can't remember, but I'll show you a copy of the book. But
Okay.
I remember because when I was young, I always used to go to my aunt. She used to work on a farm. So I used to go and visit her. And her bosses gave me the book. So I was about 13 and they gave me this book. And the whole summer I spent reading the book. Should be the one with the red cover.
Yeah, I'm looking. Dale Carnegie. I thought that was his name.
But it's a very good book. I still have it to this day.
Now, why did that book influence you so much?
I feel like there was one specific chapter that I read, and it was about the importance of somebody's name. And how if you lose sense of your name, you lose sense of yourself in an aspect. And I feel that that's like especially true for people that have moved over to countries or been displaced from their homes. Because obviously your name is who you are. It's based on your culture, your tradition, your family, your upbringing. So it holds a lot of power to you. And I remember reading about this one man, and he used to work in a pharmacy. And every single customer would say, oh, his name was too hard. His name was too hard to pronounce. And this one lady, she made it her mission to be able to say his name and pronounce it properly. So every day she used to come into the store, she used to make him say it to her. And then she'd practice it. And she eventually got it right. So she went and she said it to him. And he started crying because the last time he heard his name was back in his hometown from his mum. So people had taken so little notice of how important it was to him and just of him as a person. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
So then I figured that someone's name holds a lot of value. And we just, in this day and age, we just care very little about people that we can't even take time to learn somebody's name.
Very, very true. Okay. Interesting. Now, I want to go back a bit. So we talked about your initial experience, like the culture shock that you had when you first moved from from Zimbabwe to here. Had you ever experienced any type of racism when you moved over, or to date?
To Kobe, oh my! Yeah. I remember one time I have another black friend, as I said earlier. I obviously had two black friends in Kobe, and we went town one day and we were walking.
Now, when you say went town, so what does that mean?
Like to the mall? Is that what Americans call it?
Yeah, I just want to put it in perspective for the listeners, so they'll have a point of reference.
Yeah, so like if you go uptown with someone, it's like you go shopping, you go eat. So it's similar to like what you guys would say, like, oh, let's go to the mall. Okay. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So then we were just uptown, and then we were walking, and then somebody like threw a drink and was like, oh, look at those niggers. And I remember thinking,
what?
Yeah. I remember thinking, oh my God, they ran away. So obviously they knew what they were saying was wrong. But I just remember thinking, and they were little children as well. I was thinking, what do you even know about that?
Wow.
Yeah. That was the first time I ever experienced racism in the UK, yeah.
Wow. How did it make you feel?
Obviously, I've never been called that before, because in Zimbabwe, it's not a prevalent derogatory term, like they don't really use that word. So I'd never been called it in a hurtful manner before. So I was very surprised. Like I just had to go home because I thought, like, why would someone want to demean me when they don't even know me?
And you were with your friend.
My friend.
How did your friend react?
She reacted like it had happened to her before. So
explain what you mean by that.
Like, I was very shocked by it, but she just carried on like nothing had even happened.
Like, this is what happens.
What happens, exactly.
You know, to have to act as if that is the norm, like, that's a problem. That's an issue. Wow. So, when you went to Birmingham, I'm pretty sure because you said it was a lot more culturally diverse.
Yeah.
Did you have any similar experiences like that there?
I've been there almost 3 years now and never.
That's good. That's good. So, I don't know if you're aware. Well, I'm pretty sure you are aware of what happened back in, what was this? Around March, April of last year, when it was the public assassination or public murder of George Floyd in America, and then the protests started. and then the Black Lives Matter movement, it proliferated throughout the world. And even here in the UK, I read an article recently, and it was talking about people are still protesting now in the UK. I read about, what's the university you go to? Birmingham.
Was it Brighton? Because I think yes.
Brighton. Mm-hmm. And it was in that town. But there's also a university in Brighton, right?
Yes.
And so people, I want to say it was like 50 people, and they were protesting. And the police went immediately to break it up because they said this is against the national lockdown, the social distancing rules. Like, what do you think about that?
I feel like people don't believe there's racism within the UK because it's very, I'd say, secondhand. It's not in America. People are racist because they don't care to hide it. Whereas in the UK, it's very secondhand. So they'll use a front or a cover like, oh, it's breaking lockdown rules. So they don't want to be blatant about their racism. So they rather do it from an angle. Because if you ask a British person today, do they think they're racist? They will say no, but they'll still cross the street when they see a black person walking towards them. So I feel like it's a lot of like denial. They don't want to own up to their racism.
And what do you think that does for race relations in the UK? Like that lack of acknowledgement?
I feel like it's a lot harder to fight the problem because it's so covert. You'll be telling them there's a problem. They'll tell you, no, there's no problem. But then how do you know there's a problem? You're not the person with the problem.
Or experiencing the
problem, exactly.
Actually, they are the person with the problem.
So how can you tell me how I should feel? I'm telling you how I'm feeling, and you're telling me, no, you don't feel that way. So how do you start an argument? Or how do you start change with someone like that?
Because you can't even sit down to have a dialogue about it.
Exactly. They can't even acknowledge that there is a problem.
And, something that I've noticed, and, because I've lived and worked in the United States, lived and worked in the United Kingdom. And, even based on research that I've done in other Western civilizations that are predominantly Caucasian, Germany, France, Italy, you look at the business world, the top companies, all of them at the highest levels in the organizations, the board level, the executive level, they aren't people that look like you and I. They're Caucasian, mostly male, that are running these companies. And these are the companies that are the engines of economy within these civilizations. So you think about it even from that perspective, this didn't happen by chance.
Yes, exactly.
This is a product of deliberate oppression. This is a product of suppression. There's a reason why things are the way that they are.
Exactly.
So to hear you say, well, when you want to sit down and have that conversation and they won't even acknowledge it, yet they're still benefiting from it. It's kind of mind blowing.
It's just the fact that they refuse to acknowledge it. Like, are we so far gone that we can't even sit down and say there's a problem?
That makes perfect sense. And, that's one of the drivers for creating this podcast. I truly want us to share our experiences so that we can begin to practice group economics. Like, we need to support one another. We'll go and support Apple. We'll go and support Google. We'll go and support all these big companies, that don't really have a vested interest in our communities. Like, we need to support those businesses that are going to have a vested interest in our communities. Even when we vote, and I'm speaking specifically in the United States because I can't vote here, but even when we vote, we should vote for those people who are going to push a Black agenda, who are going to do something for these communities that we come from.
Definitely.
It's really interesting. So, I thought your answer to the last question that I asked, if you could send yourself a message, say 10 years in the future, what would that message be?
And I said, spend a little money on yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, I have such bad financial anxiety.
Okay.
And I feel like it stems from my mom, because my mother would get money. Obviously, my mother didn't work, so she'd get money from obviously her boyfriends.
So
she'd get money.
So she didn't work the whole time?
My mom's had a job one time in my entire life.
Wow. And so the rest of the time it was a man taking care of her and her children.
Us, yes. And my mum would get money, and I remember so clearly she'd get money and she'd spend it all in that day. So the rest of the month would go without food, like without power sometimes, because she had spent all her money so quickly. Mm-hmm. So I can get paid a certain amount of money, and I struggle so hard. Like I have to justify spending money to myself. Mm-hmm. So I'll be like, okay, if you buy this, you can't buy this. If you do this, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. So to myself, I'll sit there and like, even to buy something, like even if it's just £20, I have to convince myself that it's okay. Even sometimes food, which scares me because you need food, Stephanie.
Right.
But if I feel like it's a luxury item, I'm like, can you go without it? I have really bad financial anxiety. So I'm trying now to condition myself to say, you go to work every day, money's coming in all the time. You can afford to buy yourself some things. Mm-hmm. So that's why I says to myself, because I'm really good at saving. But what's the point of saving all that money if you're not reaping any benefits of going to work? Okay.
So you just touched on something. You're really good at saving, yes. But you also talked about how your mom, she would spend her money immediately. Is there a correlation between that?
Yes, definitely. My mom just would spend money with no plan for the future. She didn't really worry too much about tomorrow, what was going to happen tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And I feel like because I reaped the benefit or the disadvantage, I wouldn't call it a benefit, the disadvantage of having to deal with tomorrow when it came, that I save quite a lot of money, sometimes with no point to saving the money. Because obviously when you start saving money, you have a goal. Mm-hmm. So you say, okay, I'm saving this money towards my house, I'm saving this money to buy a car. Now I just save money to save money because I have financial anxiety.
I think that's the first time I've ever heard somebody explain it that way. The reason why they put money aside is because they have that financial anxiety. But I would also say that I think all of us experience that a bit, because I was the same way. Like when I was younger, I remember we just didn't have enough for certain things. And so when I got older, I would have, I would feel uneasy spending money on certain things. Even now, decades later, I still feel a bit,
can't justify it.
Yeah, uneasy when I spend what I would consider a large sum of money. Wow. Do you think you'll overcome that?
I don't think so. I feel like you're conditioned to be a certain way from a young age, and I just feel like that's how I'm conditioned to be. I don't see myself overcome. I'm working on it, and
so you want to overcome?
I want to overcome it, but I feel like it's just I'm conditioned to be that way. I feel like it's hard to break conditioning.
Now, what I will say, I agree with you. It is difficult to overcome conditioning, but also becoming financially literate, educating yourself on how money actually works. For me, I became financially literate about 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so it was a revelation for me. It changed my life. And that came through educating myself. That came through understanding how money works. That came through understanding how credit works. They came through understanding interest rates. They came through understanding how the American economy works, and then furthermore, how the global economy works, and how those things interact to come to paying wages, to why are there a lot of jobs here and not a lot of jobs in this country, or why are there a lot of jobs in the city that I live in and, go 30 miles east and there aren't a lot of jobs there. Just understanding those things, It eased that financial anxiety. It helped me to understand, okay, I can now make deliberate decisions to increase the amount of money that I work and the amount of money that I make, and not just in the form of wages where I'm being paid by some big corporation, but through other streams of income, through investments, even saving, when you save your money, that money should still be making you money. Get you a savings account where you're getting some type of return on your money. Because essentially, when we go put our money in the bank,
they're making money off my money, but I'm not gaining anything. Yeah.
Exactly. So they go and they invest your money. They're not holding that money so you can come and get it anytime you want. If you go to a bank, you say, hey, I want all of my money, depending on the amount, it's $50,000, $100,000. They're going to say, give us a couple days and we'll give you your money. The reason why is because it's tied up in investments. So in that same way, we as Black people need to be, stewards of our own money as well. Make that money make you money.
Definitely.
And so I always recommend to anybody that I first meet, the easiest way to start that is to start to invest in stocks. And it doesn't have to be anything too difficult. You look at what you own. Like, do you have an iPhone?
Yes.
And I know I mentioned Apple, big corporation, before and how we invest in them. But now we're investing in them in a different way. Instead of buying an iPhone, let's buy some Apple stocks. As they benefit, you benefit. And so, yeah, I would highly recommend that. Highly recommend that, because that's what's gonna move us from one economic strata to another as a people.
Definitely.
And also, as I said before, creating communities where we're able to empower them through entrepreneurship. Now, that's not to say everybody needs to be a business owner, but if you're spending money, go spend money with a Black business. Or if you know of somebody who's doing something, go support them.
Exactly.
Show up, do that thing that is going to be beneficial for that person or that group or whatever it is that they're doing. So I want to change speeds a bit.
Okay.
So as we know, we're in the UK right now.
Yes.
It's a national lockdown.
Yes.
At the time.
Yes.
I know there was a recent announcement about a plan to lift restrictions. What are your thoughts on that?
I said to you earlier in the car, I just feel like people like to be lied to.
Yeah.
Because personally, I don't see it. Because they said they planned the whole release of lockdown is based around having everybody vaccinated by June.
Mm-hmm.
At least the first injection.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've had my jab. The first one.
Mm-hmm.
I've booked the second one. And the nearest booking I could have got was April, because there's so many people that need to go for their second jabs ahead of me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't see it being possible, because it's taken us 2-3 months to vaccinate such a small portion of the population.
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to vaccinate that many more people in that short period of time? And I watched the news yesterday, even Boris Johnson couldn't explain how it was going to get done.
Just from a numbers perspective.
So then the whole 5 weeks in between, this whole in and out of lockdown, obviously now they're saying cases are dropping and it's due to the vaccine, but then how do you know that? Because we've been in lockdown since the vaccine rollout. So our case is not dropping just because we're in lockdown and we're indoors, we're not mingling? Or is it because of the vaccine? So we will not know that until we're let out. So I see us coming back in. I mean, I don't want to be a negative vibe, but I see us going back into another lockdown. I feel like it's in and out until everybody's vaccinated.
And going back, speaking of lockdowns, how has that impacted your life?
Mentally, financially.
Yes, mentally and financially.
So I normally live out of my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to move back in. And it's very mentally draining to have to explain to somebody where you are all the time when you're used to a sense of independence. Like, I'll eat when I want to eat. I'll bath when I want to bath. I can scream in my bedroom at 3 o'clock in the morning and no one's going to care. And now I've gone back to a very controlled environment where I feel like I have to be more reserved. And then you feel a bit out of place, because I understand it's my parents, my father, my stepmom, but I still feel a sense of I'm intruding on their space, because I'm used to having my own space. I'm sure they're used to having their own space as well. So it's very mentally draining. Like, sometimes I'll be at work and then my dad will phone me like, "Where are you? Where do you think I am?" I'm at work. And then financially, I'll say one good thing about the lockdown is for the first time in my life, I'm very financially stable, because I work part-time. I have a 0-hour contract, which means I work as and when I want, which also means I can take the most shifts, because I'm not contracted to any set amount of hours. Okay. So some weeks I was working 86 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've saved up quite a bit of money. Like, I'm on track to get my first home before 25.
Excellent.
Can't wait. Obviously not before then, because I'm a student and I can't get mortgage. It's a rig. But yes.
Oh, so you said because you're a student, you can't get a mortgage?
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because they base it based on your income, isn't it? But obviously I'm getting student loans from the government.
So they're saying you don't make enough money to
buy a house because why are you borrowing money from the government to pay for your student loans? So 2 more years.
Another barrier to building wealth.
Exactly.
Huh. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, Stephanie. So, just to tie all of this together, it sounds like you had a very interesting upbringing. It was very difficult. You learned a lot of what not to do in regards to finances. And specifically when you mentioned how, the way your mom spent her money, and now you have that financial anxiety. So you're overdrive in terms of saving. Mm-hmm. But I think it's good to save. Definitely. I think it's good to save. I think also to relieve that financial anxiety, I think a good point is to educate yourself about finances, about money. And you can start with the simplest thing, like I said, stocks and the things that you already own. And then also educating yourself, period. Like what you're doing right now to give back to the future generations in terms of becoming a child psychologist, I think is really noble and commendable.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're an inspiration. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, being a guest.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for hearing my story and putting it out there.
You're welcome. You're welcome.